lifestyle has caught fire, and we talk about the rewards and challenges of it. This is the Wandering Worker Podcast with Matt Lloyd.
Welcome to the Wandering Worker Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Lloyd. The Wandering Worker, as always, is powered by Magic Apple Technology, where we've been saving good businesses from bad phone systems since 2008. Whether you're tuning in from the comfort of your home office, a cafe on the corner, or exploring a new corner of the world, this podcast is your compass to navigate the ever-evolving landscape of remote work. We'll uncover invaluable insights, share personal stories, and connect with experts like the guy in front of me today. And today my guest is a good friend of mine, Danier Brimer. How you doing today, Daniel?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of everything, we do a random 5 questions.
Okay.
So here we go. Question 1. What is your theme song?
Well, Highway to Hell comes to mind, but
good foreshadowing for what's going to happen in this interview.
Thunderstruck.
Thunderstruck. AC, that's a great one.
Yeah,
it's a good one. Would you do you ever sing when you're alone?
Oh yeah.
And what songs?
A lot of made up ones since I was like 4 years old. Yeah, believe it or not. Like if someone's on my nerves, I'll write a song about them and sing it. But just whatever's popular right now. I have a lot of friends that are songwriters, and I get a lot of their demo stuff that I wear out, and then just new music. But when I'm in the truck or working out or something's always playing, and if it catches me, I'll listen to it like 10 times in a row and memorize it.
So like when you're cruising down the interstate, do you sing along?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I do too.
Yeah. That's how I stay awake when I drive long drives too. I roll the windows down and jam.
Yeah.
Real hard. So.
And that's
same song. Like it doesn't bother me to play the same song on repeat like 10 times.
If you're in that mood and it's hitting it just right, then yeah, just repeat and keep going.
My wife hates all my favorite songs because I play them over
and over again.
I'm sick of that song. Which is funny to see my 6-year-old
doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing, yeah, nonstop.
What's your earliest memory?
I think my earliest memory, besides my dad cracking an egg over my head when I was real small to make his friends laugh, was we lived in, Dad was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I remember behind our housing, there was this huge hill that we used to play on, and it had ants and trees and all that. And so I just remember like hanging out in that backyard and playing, and it had this huge hill in the backyard. And going by years later when I was adult and realizing it was just a tiny little hill, but
little bump. Yeah.
But I think growing up, or not growing up, but living in Fort Benning, those are some of my earlier memories.
Nice. What was the best compliment you've ever received?
I've had a lot of clients talk about that I treat their projects or their whatever they're responsible for like it's my responsibility, like whether it's spending their money or it's a concern of theirs that I'm helping with, that I really own that, and that I appreciate that's noticed. But I like that. I like for them to see that, because I work really hard to make sure they understand that, hey, this isn't just whatever business I've been in or whatever, that I treat their problem or like them as my customers, like that's my own thing.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Last question. Who are some of your heroes?
So I was a huge history buff growing up. I was homeschooled. And so mostly because I got kicked out of pre-K, I think, and my mom was like, I'm not going to do this.
How did you get kicked out of pre-K?
Oh my God, the list is in. I snuck onto the school bus and went on a high school field trip. And,
in pre-K?
Oh yeah.
So we're talking like 5 here?
Yeah, I locked the teachers out. So were
you a big 5-year-old?
Not really, but I locked the teachers out of the girls' nap room one time and chased them all down and kissed them, and and just like all kinds of stuff. My dad was having to come get me from school all the time, so my mom was like, I'm just going to homeschool these kids. I don't think she knew she was going to have 10 kids at that point, and that just kind of
10 kids
snowballed.
That's a big family. How does that break down? How many brothers? How many sisters?
7 boys and 3 girls. There were 6 boys in a row, and then 3 girls, and then another boy at the end. So,
are you the baby?
No, I'm the second oldest. by birth. I actually bought my brother's birthright when he was 10 years old with a zebra cake and a Powerade, but, that's beside the point. Oh, yeah.
You bought his birthright?
Yeah,
You bought it
I wanted to
cheap.
be the oldest, so, I was mowing my aunt's yard, and she paid me in zebra cakes and Powerades, and he wanted it, and I said, well, you can have it if I'm the oldest now, and he agreed, and thought I'd probably forget about it, and years
Never
later,
have.
no.
So you are the
I worked hard for that.
the top dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great stuff. Well, why don't you introduce us? Tell us what you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. By the way, ADHD just went off the rails there because you'd asked me who some of my heroes were, and we never got back to that.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so
I interrupted.
you're as bad as me.
I know.
Huge history buff. Love all the revolutionary guys that started the whole Nathan Hale and Paul Revere and just all those, John Paul Jones. And I have not yet begun to fight, and that whole story really applies a lot to me in business, and but anyway, so those are a lot of my heroes.
Okay. Thank you for catching that.
There you go. So about me, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to hear about you now.
Yeah. So grew up an Army brat. My dad was in the military, so we traveled around a lot. I was born in California. Got out of there as soon as I could walk. Literally.
We have that in common.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Military brat and
Both.
Yeah. So traveled around a lot. My mom was fairly religious, so had a pretty religious upbringing. Was homeschooled. Had a lot of siblings. Like I said, 10 siblings.
Yeah.
No twins. Same mom and dad, just one after the other. I guess in like 98, we moved from Florida back up to East Tennessee, where my dad is from. And my dad had taken a masonry class in high school, so he decided he was a mason. So that's when he went into business for himself. And I was 12 or 13 years old and homeschooled. And so mom was like, if you get your school done, you can go to work with dad, which I loved. And so I started going to work with him, mixing mud, and then learning how to lay block. And then I think by the time I was 15, I started getting farmed out to other contractors. Dad getting paid, but me working for other contractors, which was fine with me.
So you were happy to have something.
Whatever. I loved it. So, started working for other contractors, and then, getting picked up by, another contractor come along and tell Dad, well, I'll pay you more for him, So anyway, worked for and learned a lot and fell in love with that trade. We ended up moving to North Carolina, then coming back to Tennessee, and I think about that time I was 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
Got interested in the fire department, became a firefighter, went to my only taste of school, of like organized, like normal school outside of pre-K, was I did one semester at a community college, 2 days a week for 8 hours for one semester to get my EMT IV license. And so I did that, loved that, was passionate about it, but didn't really settle for me like a long-term career. But so I was doing that, doing construction, met a guy, and ended up recruiting me to come to work for a business based out of Knoxville called Service Solutions, which was like a janitorial and maintenance type company.
Right.
Janitorial was never on my radar, but the maintenance side they hired me for, and went through all the training, and then about the time I was ready to take my role, they lost the contract, and they were like, well, we've got this management position in Orlando for you. And I was like, oh, what the heck? So loaded up, moved to Orlando. Let me know if I'm going into.
No, you go. This is good.
So ended up loading up and going to Orlando. My clients were telecommunications clients.
Yep.
Bell South, Windstream. Went through the whole Bell South AT&T merger, and I managed like from St. Augustine all the way down into like Naples, so a huge swath of Central Florida. I think I was 21 at that time, 21.
Did that feel like a lot for your age to have to be responsible for?
Not really. It seemed like less, it was less physical work. It was a lot more hours and stuff, but not really. Like, I loved it. I had over 400 different individual sites, because some of them, could be like a little network hub on the side of the road that I had, the landscaping company would go by and weed eat. And then some of them were 10-story buildings with 15 cleaners in them at night. So anyway, learned a lot that business. I had some great managers, and I had one particular manager, Glenda out of Jacksonville, that really took a lot of time training me on budgets and estimating and stuff like that. And I soaked a lot of that up, learned a lot from her, and got a lot more into the business side and loving that. And so I ended up moving from Orlando up to Alabama. That's a whole story. It was a girl. It was a marriage. It was a whole, let's not dive.
Something else we have in common.
Yeah, that's right. We did.
Strike
So
one.
let's not dive off into that. But anyway, so then I was managing like from Ocean Springs, Mississippi to Tallahassee. So that was my kind of new region. During that time, the company I worked for had picked up a new building in Nashville that had just been built. And one of their board members was one of the primary tenants in that building. And they weren't doing well cleaning it. And so they had reached out to some of their, I guess, rising stars about, hey, we want to put our best foot forward. And so they recruited, some guys that they had to come up and take over this building. And they were going to pay the same amount they were paying these guys to manage one building. They really wanted to make a good showing. And so I came up to Nashville and interviewed and got the job. And that was the Pinnacle building downtown when it was first built. And so, I went from managing, it's all this territory to one site.
Building,
and it was Nashville. Recently divorced, it was great.
Yeah.
And so I came up here and took over that. And there was an event going on at the building that they were doing some lighting and stuff from. And they were struggling with some stuff. And I ended up stepping in and helping, meeting the guy that was overseeing it. That guy ended up introducing me to his boss, which was Blake Chaffin, who's my best friend. And I met with Blake, and we got to talking a lot about business, and he's also a songwriter, so he just got a publishing deal. And so I ended up coming on as his general manager and running kind of the office side of things for him, and still doing my other job full time. I was working from 7 in the morning to 11 at night, and that was just normal for me. I was loving it.
That's kind of like your schedule.
Yeah, it was great because it wasn't like work to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I was having dinner at the Hard Rock, and then going back to work. It was no big deal.
Yeah.
Loved it. So anyway, Blake just kept pushing me like, why are you not running your own business? Like, what are you doing? And so he kept pushing me, and so finally I kind of dipped my toes in the water, and I left the big company I was working for, and I got a deal working with a guy where I was going to be a part owner and I was going to manage. And then that went south, and finally I got the courage up to I'm just going to do it. So I started a construction company, and about 2 months into that, the building that I had been cleaning called, and they were like, please come back. Like, this is not going well. Blah, blah. I was like, I can't. I just started, this construction thing. Like, I'm a construction guy now, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, this isn't going well. We need you, blah, blah. And so I was like, well, sorry. And then like 2 days later, a company I had been doing some consulting for and work with called me, and they were like, man, we really want to get you back working with us. We'd love to give you some ownership and have you come down to Alabama and be a part owner. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not moving back to Alabama. Never moving back to Alabama. But I would consider opening a branch up here, and so that's what I did. So I closed the construction thing. And
how long of a gap was that? Like from when you started it to when you closed it?
Like 4 weeks.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. I picked up a lot of work, but it was mostly in East Tennessee where I had been working. And I was living in Nashville, so I was having to travel over there. And so we each put in $7,500, and I started XCI Building Services of Tennessee. And 2 months into that, I landed a $30,000 a month contract, $35,000 a month contract. And so immediately ran out of money. But, and then it went from there. So as that started to grow and everything, Blake had been a part of the first Catalyst group, which is how we know each other.
That's correct.
Catalyst together. And so I was part of Catalyst 3, and, went through that, and it was game-changing, life-changing. It was amazing.
CEO crash course.
Exactly, yeah. And took a lot of what I applied and realized, like, hey, I don't want to run the business they're running like they're running it. That business was 26 years old, and it just got over. And it was a fine business, making more money than I was making. But I wanted to grow. I wanted to go out there and take chances and grow. And so, as I started growing and going back to these guys and going like, I need more money. They were hesitant. They were like, they wanted me to get to $1 million over 5 years in revenue, and I got to $1 million in 7 months.
Yeah.
And so they were just like, slow down. And so in Catalyst, when we were training for Forum, I did a presentation, and, we did a practice presentation. And out of that presentation, I decided I needed to buy my partners out. So I went back to them and said, hey, I'm either going to buy you out or I'm going to leave and do my own thing. I don't think this is the work. And they said, well, let's get back to you. And they came back and said, we'll let you buy us out and we'll sell you our location in Alabama. So I went and borrowed a bunch of money and overpaid for it. And, we grew that up pretty quickly. At one point, it was David versus Goliath because, we're a little local thing and we were going up against a lot of big players.
Yeah.
But I think, to tie this whole story back into Wandering Worker is what I loved about my previous job was being on the move and even though it was inside the state of Florida, I was driving 4,000 miles a month inside the state of Florida. I was never in the same town. I was always moving. And so I loved Nashville, but my accounts in Nashville were within a 5-mile radius. And so taking their branch in Alabama gave me a reason to travel to Alabama. And I loved it. My work, when I work on the road, I work just as much and a lot of hours and everything, but it's different. It's fun. It's more spread out because I was more rural and stuff. And so, we grew that. That business just, exploded. We had 250 employees in 3 states. Yeah. My wife came on board and was doing HR, which I loved. We loved working together, had a great team. But that growth wasn't sustainable without just more funding. So we ended up selling to a company out of Kansas City in 2018, which also went extremely poorly. That's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, but when that company bought us, I came on board with them as their director of business development, and then I really got into the traveling thing because I had 9 salespeople in 7 states. So I love to play golf. So it was my goal to play golf in 6 states every month. So that was a little extra motivation.
Is that something that you accomplished on a regular basis? Yeah,
a couple of times. Yeah, because I would drive to Arkansas and I would drive to Alabama, which were 2 of my states. Yeah. And so within a week, I could play in 3 states. But then I had Virginia, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Florida. And so, I would, make sure I always have my golf clubs. And, so, anyway.
So, janitorial thing, that whole thing got eventually put behind you. Yep. And you were able to do what you wanted to do. So, tell me about what's going on now, the company you have now.
Yeah, so in 2016, a lot of my big janitorial clients were struggling to find a contractor that could do smaller projects for them. And so with my background, I just went out and got my contractor's license to kind of do that. And after a job or 2, I was like, man, I love this. Why am I doing this other thing? I hate this. And so had an opportunity, again, is a whole another story, some of the background, but ended up having another guy that was wanting to get away from his partner. So I started a company and hired him. The goal was for me to kind of work on both businesses, but have someone that was going to run the day-to-day. That didn't work out. There was about a 2-year period there where I was trying to make both work. Right. And I just had to pick, which one was I going to, bury myself in. And so I let the earn out and everything related and the big salary and everything related to the janitorial side go and dove into the construction side. I got to make this work. And so, and it's been, great since then. So we've grown, tremendously every year. We've had a great team. Back to the Wandering Worker. Most of it was in 2 counties here in Middle Tennessee. So we just this year opened an office in East Tennessee. So that gives me an opportunity to go back to my roots and travel and do stuff over there. And that's where we're at now. So we do. Primarily our work is large scale, high end renovations and additions, and then we sprinkle in some custom homes. So, at any given time we have 30 projects going. 4 to 6 of those are custom homes. All the rest of that's renovations and remodels. So.
Why do business with you guys over some of the other guys in town?
Well, I think it goes again back to that, treating that client's money and that client's project like it's yours. COVID threw such a weird wrench in construction. And even though that excuse is kind of gone, it seems like we're all wrestling to get out of that.
There's still a lot of lagging stuff from that time frame.
So much lagging.
I mean, there's still like shipping issues and stuff like that you're dealing with.
But it seems like jobs that started during that phase are so much harder to get completed than even new jobs. And so it's a lot of the stress right now is trying to get jobs done. Like and it's struggling. Everybody's struggling with staffing. Like, I mean, it's, we don't, because we're primarily management. So we have some in-house crews. We have an in-house tile guy, in-house trim guys, stuff like that. But most of our guys are project managers, superintendents. But a lot of our subs are struggling with staffing. So it's just, they're all spread thin. It's hard. But there's jobs that are starting in the past, 6-7 months that are going quicker than jobs that started back during all the COVID days. And so it's just, that's a big struggle. But, for us, kind of our unique, thing is that, we're probably overstaffed on supervision, but we try to make sure we've got great supervision on jobs. We have a very transparent billing system. We're cost plus. And so we include every single receipt, every single timesheet, everything. When
is that unique in your industry?
I think the cost plus is not. I think the transparency, can be unique. Contractors just get a bad rap, but for every horrible contractor story, there's 2 horrible client stories. I mean, it's just a tough. It's a big life experience, a remodel or a new build, and it's a lot of money. And to a contractor and to a sub, it's just like going to work. It's just like going about your normal day. If you work at a bank and you sit, behind the teller line and you do that all day, if someone walks up and withdraws, their life savings, that's a huge ordeal to them, but you just pulled out,
It's just another transaction.
It's just another transaction.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to blend that understanding with the clients, like this is day-to-day stuff for them, but also with the subs and employees, that this is a huge ordeal. You need to treat it as such. So I spent a lot of time trying to make that blend together, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Earlier we were talking and you mentioned that, Catalyst was a big, a kind of a pivotal point in your career. What are some other things that really stood out that have helped you kind of take the next step?
Well, definitely, having my kid was huge. Just wanting that really drove me to. My wife and I worked together, and so there was a lot of personal time there, and so I felt like I could be at work and still spend time with her. But having him and just wanting to get home, 3-4 o'clock rolls around. Even now with him in school, it's like he can stay in aftercare until he's 6 now, so he can stay in aftercare until probably 6 o'clock, but. If it's like 3:30, I'm itching to go get him, spend the afternoon with him. So that's really made me hone in on, how important family time is and making time for that. I think selling the business was a huge thing that motivated me. COVID was a big thing. I think just we were just on this kind of steady climb and everything was going to be great. Just out of nowhere, having a big dive and having to react to that. And, that was a huge, turning point as well. So,
yeah, I remember back. So Daniel and I have been in forum together. We're both members of EO Nashville chapter, and we've been in the same forum now for going on 8 years.
Or 9.
Is it 9? Yeah, I guess it could be 9. And I remember back.
It's got to be because I got married in Catalyst. Well, I was in Catalyst.
Yeah. And
that was our 10-year anniversary is next month.
Oh, then yeah, definitely. Then
yeah.
It would be 9.
Yeah.
Coming up this year, probably
yeah.
9. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, because we would have our forum meeting and you don't get out of that till sometimes till like 8 or 9 at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you after that, when you had the janitorial business, I got to go clean toilets.
Yeah.
I got to go empty because somebody didn't show up.
Yeah.
And you had, like 300 people that you were having to manage. And I mean, you were miserable back then. And since you've let that go, you're just a totally different person.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, how the difference between now and then is.
Yeah. So, I think like a lot of young entrepreneurs, that top line revenue was a huge ordeal to me. And I love EO, but I think a little bit of that is based off of some of those things that like organizations like EO and others. And when you get into EO, you realize that's not what they're about. But it's like you have to be doing $1 million in revenue to get in. And so that automatically goes to top line revenue. Since I've been in EO, I've done 3 or 4. We're doing one now. We're co-moderating a Catalyst forum, but I've done several Catalyst forums, and that's something that I've preach to them, like, that's important, and we want you to get there, and we want you, but the top line is not what your focus should be. There's been Catalyst forums that have been at 600,000 revenue, and I've been at 6 million in revenue, and they're making more money than I am. And so I think that's been a big transition too, is that I'm not so focused on top line revenue anymore. I'm trying to work on the nuts and bolts and the bottom line. Just before this podcast, I was on a call where I'm transitioning over to this profit first style of accounting, and I was on the phone or on a call with my profit first professional, and just looking at numbers from the bottom, not from the top, and making those adjustments. And so that's been a big part of it. I think, again, like taking my time and dividing it up into there's work and there's family, but also new as I've added me. So I've been doing the 75 hard challenge and really focusing on health, mental and physical health, and I always loop me in with family. So it was like 50% work, 50% family, but family can be in its own way draining at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, now getting it out to where it's like, 35 family, 35 work, and then the rest of it for me type thing, and really trying to focus on that. I think another big thing for me is like when in janitorial, the bulk of our work happens while everybody else is asleep.
Right.
And then from the management side and from the sales side, the majority of that happens while everybody's awake. And so having a business where we literally had people working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
And phone you had to be available.
Had to be
7,
available.
20, yeah.
And I had a great team, and I had a large team. But, when you have, we used to clean, HCA's headquarters downtown, and there's 25 people at night that clean that, spread across 500,000 square feet. That's a lot of production.
Yeah.
And so if you're down, one person, you can cover. If you're down 2 people, it gets tight. If you're down 3 people, the account manager is working. If you're down 5 people, you're done. You're going to be, I've spent mornings in there till 2:00 in the morning, trying to vacuum floors and stuff like that. And so getting out of an industry where I'm still on call with construction,
sure,
but there's nothing going on, especially in residential, after hours and on the weekends and stuff like that. And so that's been a game changer. And, I think this is going to be a legacy business for me. I enjoy it. I love it. I want it, to be doing this a long time. This isn't like a business I would grow and sell, which is what I wanted to do with my janitorial company from the beginning.
Right.
But, if I ever did have another business, it would definitely be something that's not 24/7, not on the weekends, things like that.
Yeah. So with the current business, where do you see this? Like, what are your goals for this the next 5 years?
Well, number one goal is to get profitable. I've always been focused on growth, and we've had great growth. We're, went from 4 million to 6 million to 8 million. We'll do between 10 and 12 this year, and so that's always just been like grow, more accounts, more people, and stuff like that, and not really care what the profit is, because I've always believed that'll shake itself out. Everybody, more sales.
This is going to be like a fundamental change for you.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Are you nervous about that?
No, not at all. I don't get nervous about much.
No, so we always do a thing in our forum when we come in, just kind of explain a little bit about who Daniel is. It's how do you rate certain things? How do you rate yourself physically, mentally, spiritually? Daniel's always 10s across the board. If he's at an 8 or a 9, there's a major issue.
Yeah.
He is the most optimistic guy I think I've ever met in the face of overwhelming odds. Anybody else would just be freaking out.
Yeah.
I remember there's been a lot of times that you tell me something, I'm like, how are you not freaking out right now?
Payroll days.
Payroll, I didn't want to say it, but the payroll days, and I was like, how are you doing? He goes, it'll be fine. And it always worked out.
Yeah, and janitorial, labor was 74 cents of every dollar we made. It's extremely labor intensive. And so, a payroll was $130,000 every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Sometimes more. And that's not even the tax part. The tax was separate,
Yeah.
And so there'd be time where payroll was tomorrow, and I needed $130,000, and I had $20,000 in my account because it's a reoccurring payroll. And it goes back, it's so funny because this is how I rationalize things, because it goes back to the whole banker withdrawal type thing. When I'm invoicing Bridgestone or Highwoods or whatever, Mobile Aerospace down and out, my bill coming through is just one of the many bills. So the person processing those and seeing that, to them, 2 days difference in processing that to them is just coming in and clocking out. Maybe they left early for their kids' recital and my bill didn't get processed and I get it a day later. To them, that's just a thing. So I used to have this thing where I would find out who was the accounts payable person and I would send them a personalized, nice like Yeti mug or something. It would sit on their desk and they would like think about us, and stuff, as a way to try to prompt them to, oh yeah, I should pay them today. But yeah, so I'd have 20 grand and I'd just be like, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to sweat it. I had great relationships with my bank and stuff like that. And I'd be like, I'm going to cover it, give me, and I had a few, friends that I had done work with or mentors or whatever that, I could go, hey, I need 100 grand for 48 hours and I'll give you 105 back or something like that. And they'd be like, sure, no problem, type thing, which is an expensive way to grow a business, which is not ideal. But yeah, so, just that kind of stress. But yeah, I mean, I'm a goldfish. So there's times I may get to a 4 or 5, but it's for a very brief moment. Yeah. Like driving here and getting cut off, and the traffic may drop me to a 5, but, I'll instantly.
And you're good. You start singing it.
Start singing again. That's right. Good. That's right. So, but yeah, so, you hear a lot be a goldfish, but that's definitely, that's why I enjoy golf so much even though I suck sometimes, it's just because, I'll get it on the next shot.
Yeah. So what would be a piece of advice you'd give a young Daniel Brimer who's starting XCI Janitorial? What would you go back and say to yourself?
Don't get in the janitorial business. Yeah.
You would tell him just to stick with the construction thing. Do that. Do not go down that road.
Yeah. I remember sitting in American Paper and Twine over here one afternoon, picking up some product or something for building, and just, miserable, worked so much that week and clients fussing. And because, the janitorial is unique in that, you take a 20-story building full of attorneys and bankers and stuff. And there might be, for instance, the Pinnacle building probably has about 4,000 trash cans. Let's say it has 1,500, 2,000 people in it. Most of every office has a trash can. The break rooms have trash cans. The copy rooms have trash cans. The bathrooms have trash cans. So this is math. Yeah. So let's say there's 4,000 trash cans. So you're talking about extremely low paid wages because it's a cutthroat industry as well. It's such a low barrier to entry, a mop bucket, a minivan, and a vacuum cleaner, and you got yourself a janitorial company. And so the rates are just, there's
all over the place.
They're super low. And so your amount, and you're already at 74 cents every dollar. So what you have to pay is super low. It's gotten a lot better since COVID, but anyway, so you've got a low paid, low skilled type workforce, which is another big point I'll talk about in a minute. But, and you're expected to be perfect, because if we got 99.5% of all the trash cans in that building, how many trash cans got missed?
40? 20? Yeah.
So that's 20 people the next morning
that are going to complain.
And that's a lot of complaints.
That's very
so when you think about it like that, it's a tough business.
Yeah. You definitely get calls for that.
Oh, absolutely.
That's going to be something that people complain about, because I pay for that. I need that.
Because a property manager, as great as a lot of them are, they have their own plates full. Janitorial is just a part. And then when you get 10 emails in a row as these attorneys are coming to work, or these whatever, God forbid it's a medical space, that's even, worse, and rightly so. None of these people are wrong. I'm just saying, like, the stress there is intense. I don't remember where we're going with all that, but anyway.
Well, so
advice. I was sitting at APT, and this guy came in, and he's just started chatting with me. I could see he was young and energetic and happy and all that, and he was chatting with me, and he was like, "What do you?" He saw my shirt. "What do you do?" And I told him, and he was like, "What do you do? What buildings?" So I told him. He's like, "Oh man, I just can't wait. I just started mine, and I'm cleaning. I got this little doctor's office, and I'm talking to this dealership." He was like, "What should I do?" And I was like, "Stop while you're ahead. Just don't do it." But anyway, so
did he burst his little bubble?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think he was too excited about, because that is the thing. The janitorial industry, the 85% of those businesses are like well under $1 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And they probably do pretty good. A lot of owner operators, and the money's good. I made way more money under $100,000 in revenue, or $100 million in revenue, than I did at $6 million in revenue.
Yeah.
But anyway, but no, like real advice would be, focus on the bottom line. Don't get obsessed with that top line. Focus on keeping your expenses low. Don't chase. There's such a stupid thing in sales called a loss leader, which is just a stupid way to give money away. I'm sure there's instances where it applies, but, loss leaders for, $500,000 a year accounts quickly eat up all of your margin.
Yeah.
Know what your margin's in and grow within that, because if your margin is 5%, which it's super tight in construction too, but especially in janitorial, but say it's 5 or 10%, your cost to grow is X, and those two don't line up, you're constantly in the hole. That's what we're talking about. My expenses last year were 108% of my revenue. So
that's pretty basic math right there.
right. I mean, we grew by over $2 million in new revenue, but
it all went out the window.
Right, exactly. We didn't even break even. So and what good is that? We're not in business to give away money or to. And I guess that's part of the advice. What are you in business for? What do you want to reverse engineer it?
Yeah.
What's your outcome? What do you want to do? How do you want to achieve that? And then figure out how to make that work for you.
Yeah, and they have some of that stuff in Profit First, some of those formulas and all that kind of stuff out back through it, and we're going through that here as well. So I'm excited to see how all that breaks down and goes. So we know that you tell your younger self, stop what you're doing, don't get in the janitorial business. But what's something you learned from that experience? What's your big positive takeaway that you learned from that experience?
I think one of the things is definitely that you can't outwork your problems. I always thought like I'm the hardest worker.
And you are the hardest working guy. I know.
And I always thought, well, I can just outwork my problems. I can, I'll be here, I'll get a leg up on my competition, and I'll get up because I've got it in me. I can work harder. Mm-hmm. That's foolishness. Work smarter, not harder is definitely a real thing. And I think that's a big one. Other things that I learned are time lost, and this is cliche, but time lost is time you can't get back. And so the things that I gave up on and the trips that I didn't do and the people I didn't spend time with because I had to work, you can't get that back. I mean, those are the big ones. There's something else that popped in my head. I can't remember, but those are some of the things for sure.
Nice. Well, listen, before we wrap up, I just want to again thank you, Daniel, for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed talking with you and everything. Where can our listeners find you or learn more about your company?
Yeah, Nova Constructors is my business. www.novaconstructors.com. Hopefully you can't find me. I'm trying to scrub myself from the internet so I can't be tracked down.
Smart. Yeah.
So, that's my company. Obviously, the golf course or tennis court or any event, you can bump into me there. But,
absolutely.
But as far as the company, Nova Constructors.
Yeah, and check him out. He does excellent work. By far the best contractor I know, and I would trust him for doing anything for sure. So
not fast, but
well, I mean,
be done
there's
right.
Fast and there's good, right? So you got to get it done the right way. Well, hey, that's it for this episode of The Wandering Worker. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from Daniel today. Be sure to mark your calendar for our next episode. We will continue to deep dive into the world of The Wandering Worker. We'd also like to thank our sponsor today, Magic Apple, for bringing you this episode. If you're not thrilled with your business phone system or your work from home experience, give us a shout. We've been helping people since 2008. Again, I am Matt Lloyd, and thank you. We'll see you next time on the Wandering Worker Podcast.